This video will talk about how combat and team building work in Reverse 1999. The topics that will be covered are as shown on the screen. We will be discussing a variety of aspects, starting from the very basic to eventually the team archetypes. Timestamp is provided if you have understood some parts that are discussed here. Without further ado, let us start with the basic combat mechanic. Take a look at what is shown on the screen. When you click on a character inside the crew button, you will first see this screen. I will be explaining with Flutter as an example. Let us start with the one indicated with the red box. Those are their skill sets. A character typically has one ultimate and two incantations. Incantations can be casted every round provided they are available in your spell dock, while ultimate can only be casted after you have gained enough Moxie, which we will be discussing shortly. Regular incantations, typically called S1 and S2, have Incantation Rank. Incantation Rank is capped at 3 stars. The higher the rank, the better the effect is provided, whether it is damage, support, or duration boost. As shown on the screen, Flutterpate's S1 gains damage boost when its incantation rank is higher. On the other hand, Ultimate typically needs 5 Moxie before being available in the spell dock. After casting Ultimate, a character will consume 5 Moxie. There are some exceptions, but generally, most characters are like that. Take a look at the red box. Those yellow colored diamonds indicate how much Moxie a character has. In this image, Flutterpate has 2 Moxie, indicated by 2 yellow colored diamonds. Her maximum cap of Moxie is 5 Moxie, as indicated by the total amount of diamonds below her HP. The bottom part is the spell dock area, where you can click any of their skills to be casted during the round. Take a look at what is shown on the screen. Flutterpate only has 3 Moxie in this image of the second round. Therefore, in the spell dock, Flutterpate's ultimate is not available. Now let us take a look at this image of the third round. Flutterpate finally has 5 Moxie, so her ultimate is available in the spell dock. After using her ultimate, Flutterpate will consume all of her Moxie and end up with 0 Moxie afterwards. Take a look at the red box which has the phrases "I can fly." This is Flutterpate's Insight. Insight is akin to a character's passive skills that provide further boosts and effects on the character. Take a look at the red box which has the phrases Psychube Preference. Psychube is akin to a character's equipment. Every character can hold a Psychube to gain additional stats and effects in the battle. Psychubes are only available via events and shops. Take a look at the red box which has the word Portrait. Portrait is the amount of multiple copies you have on a character. As you can see, I have 2 extra copies of Flutterpate after pulling for the first copy. Therefore, my Flutterpate is P2. P indicates Portrait and 2 indicates 2 extra copies. Portraits provide benefits for the character, whether it is damage boost or quality of life improvement on what they need to do. As you can see here, Flutterpate at P1 has damage increase on her second incantation, which is not that important, but the continuous action buff provided is extended to 2 rounds. This is the quality of life improvement mentioned previously. Take a look at the red box which has the word Resonance. Resonance is akin to the build of a character. They provide more additional stats to the character. Resonance can be upgraded up to level 15. Take a look at the red box at the top left corner. That is Afflatus, which is akin to the element of a character. In this case, Flutterpate is of Tsar Afflatus. Stronger Afflatus will deal more damage, so if Flutterpate attacks Mineral Afflatus enemies, she will deal 30% more damage. There are 6 Afflatus in the game, which are Star Afflatus, Mineral Afflatus, Beast Afflatus, Plant Afflatus, Spirit Afflatus, and Intellect Afflatus. Now let us take a look at what will be shown before entering the battle. Please take a look at the red box. This is our team formation. A team can typically have up to 4 team members. The same Psychube cannot be held by multiple team members at once. Take a look at the red box on the bottom right of the screen. This is tuning, which is 13 skills. They can provide multiple benefits in the battle at the cost of 13's Moxie. 13 can generally gain Moxie whenever allies use action points. There are currently 3 tunings in the game. As previously mentioned, characters can only cast Ultimate when they have 5 Moxie. To gain Moxie, characters need to either use, move, or merge their incantations. Using and moving said incantations will cost you 1 action point, which is the part shown in the red box. Let us take a look at a short gameplay recording of a battle, and focus on Flutterpage. In the beginning of the battle, Flutterpage has 2 Moxie due to her insight. In the first round, we use her second incantation. She gains 1 Moxie through the action. In the second round, we use 2 of her first incantations. She gains 2 Moxie through those actions. At the end of the second round, Flutterpage now has 5 Moxie. In the third round, since she already has 5 Moxie, her ultimate appears in the spell dot, so she is now able to cast her ultimate this round. Now let us take a look at another short gameplay recording of a battle and focus on Winsong. At the start of the second round, Winsong has 2 Moxie. Her first incantation is then moved to merge with another of her first incantation. This causes her to gain 2 Moxie at once. Her newly merged first incantation then merges again with the same incantation rank of her first incantation, which causes her to gain 1 additional Moxie after the initial 2. This one action of moving her incantation causes her to gain 3 Moxie in total, which resulted in her having 5 Moxie. She also uses 2 of her second incantations afterwards, but since the Moxie cap is at 5, she does not gain any Moxie from those 2 actions. As previously mentioned also, action point is what is shown in the red box. AP is the amount of action a team can do within a single round. Typically, a team consisting of 4 members can use 4 action points in a single round. There are characters that can increase the amount of action points you can use in a single round, like Flutterpage, Molder, Tooth Fairy, and so on. Action point is important because it is deeply tied with Moxie. Using action point will let characters gain Moxie, so it is a very important aspect of the combat mechanic. Action point dictates how the rotation of a team will look like. A rotation typically revolves around 2 aspects, which are ultimates and incantations. Some characters have ultimates as their main focus, either to deal massive damage or to provide support. In an effective and efficient rotation, characters that provide support will have to have 100% uptime. On the other hand, some characters have incantations as their main focus, whether they are for damage or support. An example of a character whose rotation revolves around ultimate to deal massive damage is Recoleta. While Recoleta can cast her ultimate after she gains 5 Moxie, she has 8 additional Moxie caps through her insight. If she uses at least 10 Moxie to cast her ultimate, the ultimate might bonus she gains will be doubled, making her damage output even stronger. An example of a character whose rotation revolves around ultimate to have a 100% uptime support is Lopera. Lopera deploys her array via her ultimate, and her array needs to be deployed at a 100% uptime. If Lopera is not P3 and above, her array only lasts for 3 rounds. Therefore, within those 3 rounds, she needs to gain 5 Moxie so that she can cast her ultimate again after her array runs out. Since she can gain 4 Moxie passively in 3 rounds, she simply needs to use one of her incantations, usually her first incantation, after using her ultimate within those 3 rounds. An example of a character whose rotation revolves around using incantation to provide benefit is Flutterpage. Her second incantation grants the team 1 extra action point for 1 round. This is an amazing buff that will make your rotation smoother. At P1, the duration of her second incantation is increased to 2 rounds, making the rotation of a team with her even more efficient. Therefore, based on how many action points that a character needs to consume to be effective, said character can be categorized as AP hungry or AP generous. Some people use the terminology AP friendly, but it is basically the same as AP generous. AP hungry means a character needs to use many action points in order to be effective, while AP generous means a character does not need to use many action points in order to be effective. As the rotation of a team usually revolves around the main DPS, characters that mainly deal damage are generally AP hungry. while characters that provide support and survivability tend to be AP generous. Character archetypes are the roles they bring when they are in the battlefield. Roles here refer to what they need to do in order for the team to win the battle. A character can be categorized into 3 character archetypes, which are DPS, Support, and Sustain. DPS is the character that mainly focuses on dealing damage. We can categorize DPS further, which are main DPS and sub DPS. Main DPS is the main damage dealer, while sub DPS is the damage dealer that can help to increase the damage output of your main DPS. Therefore, main DPS characters are generally AP hungry, while sub DPS characters tend to be AP generous. Examples of DPS characters are as shown on the screen, which include but are not limited to Beryl, Ramona, Broom, Liang Yue, Recoleta, Miss Stranger, Nautica, the Twins, and Winsong. In almost all cases, DPS is mandatory in a team. Stalling is not possible in almost all game modes due to the limited amount of the rounds we can get in order to win. Additionally, most of the time, it is not worth using 4-star DPS characters as they cannot be upgraded to Insight 3, making them weaker in terms of damage output and frailer in terms of survivability. Support is the character that is mainly used to increase the damage output of the main DPS. Usually, they are somewhat different from sub DPS because some cannot deal as much damage. Therefore, one of the criteria for a good support is that they usually have to be AP generous. Examples of support characters are as shown on the screen, which include but are not limited to Flutterpage, Charon, Paper Heron, Tuesday, Lopera, Ananli, Tooth Fairy, and Rhiannon. Control is a subcategory of the support character archetype. As seen from its naming, Control focuses on crowd control, which includes making enemies unable to act or decreasing their Moxie. This character archetype used to be dominant in the early patches of the games, where many enemies still don't have crowd control immunity. However, nowadays, Control is almost never seen anymore due to many endgame enemies being immune to any types of control. Currently, only Anjonala and Anandi are frequently used, but their main purpose is not for control. Regulus makes a comeback with her second Euphoria, but she becomes the main DPS instead of being a support or control. Our last character archetype is none other than Sustain. Sustain is the character that is mainly used to increase the survivability of a team. Sustain character is mandatory in every team, because your team will not be able to survive after a few rounds without them. Examples of Sustain characters are as shown on the screen, which include but are not limited to Marsha, Enigma, Kiparina, Fatutu, Robuska, Fila, Medicine Pocket, and Sotobi. Now let us talk about role compression. Role compression is characterized by characters being able to provide many functions. In other words, a character with role compression is a character with multiple character archetypes. The benefit of role compression is to have more leniency on the team slots. In the current meta, you will usually encounter 2 types of role compression, which are sub DPS/support and sustain/support. Being partially support matters a lot because it means that they are generally AP generous, providing more leniency for the main DPS to use more action points in the rotation, while also being able to significantly improve the damage output of your main DPS. Examples of sub DPS/support characters are as shown on the screen, which include but are not limited to Isolde, Charon, Mercuria, Semmelweis, Chen Heguang, Cassandra, Mulder, and Argus. Examples of sustain/support characters are as shown on the screen, which include but are not limited to Marsha, Enigma, Kiparina, Fatutu, Robuska, Fila, and Medicine Pocket. Notice that most sustain characters also do some sort of support. For example, Marsha can provide Discipline Force buff via her ultimate that increases critical rate, critical damage, and Incantation Might to all allies, while Enigma can provide Cypher Machine buff via his ultimate that increases critical damage and damage bonus to all allies. we can make a conclusion that a good sustain needs to be able to provide support for the team as well. Too much of a role compression is not always a good thing. A character needs to excel in one thing even if they are able to do many things. While it was important back then when the game was still very new, since it provides more leniency on your team slots, the current meta does not like Jack of all trades but Master of none type of characters. For example, pre-Euphoria 6 was considered as the best during version 1.4, simply because of his role compression. He can deal good damage via his ultimate, provide buffs and debuffs to improve the damage output of the team, and a little bit of healing as well. However, he did not excel in anything. As a result, before he gained his Euphoria, he was not used anymore. Furthermore, he is also AP hungry as a support, so he may have hindered the rotation of your team. With all that being said, let us discuss the fundamentals of team building. A team needs to have all three character archetypes to be considered as usable. For example, a team cannot function if you only put all DPS in the team slots, or only DPS and support but no sustain. Almost all meta teams have this as their fundamental, but only the Inspiration team archetype does not follow this, which I will explain in the last section. As for Afflatus advantage, it does not matter much during the early and mid game, but it is very important in the end game, especially on Main's Bulletin and Focus Flashback, so please keep that in mind. A character in your team can only be considered as suitable or excellent if and only if they meet at least one of the requirements here, which is either being able to perform their specific role very well, and or having amazing role compression, but not a Jack of all trades but Master of none type character. An example of the first one is none other than Flutterpage. Her support is amazing, whether it is providing AP +1 or buffing follow-up attack damage output. This is also the same as Rhiannon, but her buffs are more general and powerful than that of Flutterpage, which also providing a whole extra round instead of just an additional action point. Both Flutterpage and Rhiannon excel at providing massive support to the team. An example of the latter one is Charon. Being able to skip level 2 Pulsing Field and significantly reduce the amount of Dynamo needed to upgrade Pulsing Field level 1 to level 3 are amazing, while also providing many support like inflicting critical defense and damage taken debuff on the enemies to increase allies' damage output. Furthermore, he has self-buff penetration rate and his follow-up attack scale with ultimate might, so he can deal a lot of damage as well. He can do all that damage without even needing to consume a single action point after the first round, which makes him having an amazing role compression as a sub-DPS/ support. One sustain in the team is always mandatory. The reason has been discussed in the previous section, which is because your team cannot survive long without sustain. DPS is almost always mandatory, but you should always bring one. A team should consist at most 2 characters that are AP hungry, as we only have 4 action points per round. Too many AP hungry characters in your team will lead to ineffective and inefficient rotation, significantly reducing your damage output as a whole. This is actually the main reason why Sotheby is typically not used in the Poison team unless you do not have any other alternatives, as he is way too AP hungry, but there are already 2 characters in said team that are also AP hungry. There are generally 2 types of teams that follow these fundamentals. The first type is a team with 1 main DPS, 1 sub-DPS, 1 support, and 1 sustain. An example of a team for this is the Poison team, where Ramona is the main DPS, Willow is the sub-DPS, Tuesday is the support, and Marsa is the sustain. The second type is a team with 1 main DPS, 2 support, and 1 sustain. An example of a team for this is the follow-up attack team, where Liang Yue is the main DPS, Flutterpage and Lopera are the support, and Fatutu is the sustain. Note that all the examples provided have fulfilled the fundamentals of team building, which are having 3 character archetypes and only 1 or 2 AP hungry characters. In older patches where enemies were not immune to crowd control, control could be considered as a separated team archetype, but this is not the case anymore. Of course, there is a special exception where a team does not follow this fundamental, which is the Inspiration team, but generally speaking, there is not a single proper team that does not follow these fundamentals. Now let us talk about arrays and force fields. The reason why this deserves a separate section is because of how many meta teams rely on arrays and on force fields. Anyways, arrays are akin to field effects, where only one can exist at a time. Multiple arrays cannot stack with each other, so if a new array is deployed, the old array will automatically disappear. On the other hand, force fields are akin to passive aura, which are considered as buffs, so they can coexist with each other. To differentiate arrays and force fields in a battle, simply look at the red boxes shown on the screen. The one at the top left corner is array, while the one listed together with other buffs or debuffs above your character's HP bar is force field. Examples of arrays include but are not limited to Chi Panorama, which can be deployed by Paper Heron, Pulsing Field, which can be deployed by any Dynamo characters, Crucible Arsenal, which can be deployed by Lopera, Blood Domain, which can be deployed by Semmelweis, Horror Night Story, which can be deployed by Tuesday, A Prophecy Told, which can be deployed by Gertian, and Crimson Dreamscape, which can be deployed by Primitive Earth's Manifest exclusively in Reverie. Some teams either do not function well or cannot function at all without arrays. For example, Igor's team needs Lopera's array, or else his damage output will decrease significantly. On the other hand, Poison team cannot function at all if there is no Tuesday's array. Hence, array is an important aspect of team building. Examples of force fields include but are not limited to Gust Force Field by Flutterpage, Guidance of the Three Gods by Cassandra, Cosmic Energy by Mercuria, Mirrored from Above by Beryl, Work as One by Chen He Guang, Leadership by Lucy, and Rapport by Rhiannon. Force fields can significantly improve the damage output of your team. They are technically not mandatory, but they improve the damage output of the team you want to build by a significant amount. Furthermore, as previously mentioned, they can stack too. For example, Liang Yue team usually uses Flutterpage and either Chen He Guang or Rhiannon. They provide force fields in the battle, which significantly increases Liang Yue damage output. Our last topic is about team archetypes. Team archetypes are important as the current meta of the game revolves around them. As previously mentioned, all meta team archetypes follow the fundamentals of the team building that we have discussed in the previous section, with the exception of Inspiration Team Archetype. There are currently 9 meta team archetypes in the game right now, which are Follow-Up Attack, Dynamo and its variant Dynamo Wheelchair, Inspiration, Lingering Glow, Bloodtithe, Ritual, Rank Up, Poison, and Conduit. Let us briefly discuss these team archetypes one by one and how they generally work. The first one is none other than the Follow-Up Attack team archetype. This team archetype is the most common one, as most characters can do follow-up attacks. It revolves around extra action and repose or counter attack. The core member of this team archetype is Flutterpage. Core member means that removing them from the team will result in significant damage loss, as Flutterpage's force field increases the damage output of the team by a significant amount. Examples of follow-up attack teams may look like these. Pick a main DPS of your choice, usually either Liang Yue, Winsong, or Ezio. You can also use Jiu Niangzi and Kalabauna. After that, pick a support of your choice with the addition of Flutterpage, who is mandatory in the team. The support may either be Lopera, Chen He Guang, Cassandra, or Rhiannon. Additionally, if you are using Jiu Niangzi or Kalabauna, Pickles is a great support for them as well. You can also use Anjonala if you are using Kalabauna. The last slot is reserved for the Sustain, which is usually either Fatutu, Marsha, or Kiparina. Enigma works too, but keep in mind that Enigma deploys Pulsing Field, so you cannot use support like Lopera in the same team. Next, we have the Dynamo team archetype. This team archetype revolves around the array Pulsing Field, as we want to focus on its cycle. Pulsing Field has 3 levels, from level 1 to level 3, and our main goal is to get to level 3 Pulsing Field as they provide the most amount of damage buffs to all allies. There is also a variant of this team archetype, which is called the Dynamo Wheelchair. Instead of the main DPS being part of the Dynamo archetype, they are usually part of the Ritual archetype, as Pulsing Field level 3 provides a significant amount of ultimate might buffs, while characters like Algris provides ultimate might buffs to all allies as well. The core members of this team archetype are Charon and Enigma. Without them, you will have a harder time to level up Pulsing Field while also significantly reducing the damage output of the team. Examples of Dynamo teams may look like these. Pick a main DPS of your choice, usually either Broom, Corvus, or Lucy. After that, pick a support of your choice with the addition of Charon, who is mandatory in the team. The support may be either Alrage, Flutterpage, or Rhiannon. Broom may also act as a sub-DPS for Corvus. The last slot is reserved for the Sustain, which is usually Enigma. The variant of Dynamo archetype, which is the Dynamo Wheelchair archetype teams, may look like these. The support and sustain remain the same as the Dynamo team archetype, but the main DPS is usually part of the Ritual archetype. For example, you may use either Recoleta, Mist Ranger, and Silverwing Eagle. Other characters that are able to spam ultimate like A-Knight work really well in the Dynamo Wheelchair team. Next, we have the Inspiration team archetype. This team archetype revolves around impromptu attacks which appear at the end of your AP resolve every round. Therefore, all characters in this team archetype are considered as support, as they are used to increase the damage output of your impromptu attacks. There are two types of team based on the Afflatus, which are Star Promptu that uses Barcarola and Plan Promptu that uses Paper Heron. The core members of this team archetype are Tooth Fairy and Kiparina. Examples of Inspiration teams may look like these. If you need Plan Afflatus, go with Paper Heron. If you need Star Afflatus, go with Barcarola. You can use Paper Heron and Barcarola together, and the Afflatus will depend on who is at the back. If Barcarola is behind Paper Heron, the Afflatus will be Star Afflatus, and vice versa. Anyways, pick another support of your choice with the addition of Tooth Fairy, who is mandatory in the team. Usually, for Plan Promptu, the support will either be Rhiannon or Anandi, while for Star Promptu, the support will be Aleph. Voyager and Regulus with First Euphoria can be used if you do not have any other alternatives. The last slot is reserved for the Sustain, which is usually Kiparina. Do note that Paper Heron deploys an array via her ultimate. Next, we have the Lingering Glow team archetype. This team archetype revolves around Burn, where the damage output of your team scales with the amount of burn inflicted on the enemies and Lingering Glow stacks you have. Lingering Glow stacks can be obtained by inflicting burn. Therefore, all characters part of the Lingering Glow archetype are able to inflict burn to the enemies. Note that Lingering Glow is mutually exclusive with Bloodtithe, so you cannot use characters from both archetypes together in the team. The core members of this team archetype are Isolde and Marsa. Examples of Lingering Glow teams may look like these. Pick a main DPS of your choice, usually either Burial or Spatodea. After that, pick a support of your choice with the addition of Isolde, who is mandatory in the team. If you are using Burial, you can either use Lawrence Butterfly or Flutterpage as a support, but for Spatodea, you cannot use Flutterpage since he cannot do any follow-up attacks unlike Burial. Rhiannon is also a viable option as a support in this team. The last slot is reserved for the Sustain, which is usually Marsa. Next, we have the Bloodtithe team archetype. This team archetype revolves around HP sacrifice, where the damage output of your team scales with the amount of lost HP. This team is especially very tanky when compared with other teams, as they have increased max HP. Note that Bloodtithe is mutually exclusive with Lingering Glow, so you cannot use characters from both archetypes together in the team. The core members of these team archetypes are Semmelweis and Robuska. Examples of Bloodtithe teams may look like these. Pick a main DPS of your choice, usually either Nautica or Eternity with her second Euphoria. After that, pick a support of your choice with the addition of Semmelweis, who is mandatory in the team. There are plenty of options for the support, whether it is Sentinel, Flutterpage, or even Rhiannon. The last slot is reserved for the Sustain, which is usually Robuska. However, if you do not have Robuska, Fatutu is a good alternative. Next, we have the Ritual team archetype. This team archetype revolves around spamming ultimate. Therefore, all characters in this archetype are able to gain Moxie quicker than other characters. For this team archetype, there are no specific core members, but if you are using Igor, Molder and Opera are basically mandatory. The support and sustain of this team archetype may be replaced with those from the Dynamo Wheelchair archetype unless, again, you are using Igor as your main DPS. Example of Ritual teams may look like this. Pick a main DPS of your choice, usually either Igor or Recoleta. The support slots are quite flexible, but for Igor, Lopera and Molder are needed. For Recoleta, you can have many combinations, but generally, you should bring Melania as he can increase the Moxie cap limit further so that Recoleta can spend more Moxie when casting ultimate. You can also bring either Molder, Lopera, Gertian, or Nameday in Recoleta's team. The last slot is reserved for the sustain, which is usually Marsa, but Rubuska is also a great option since he can also buff ultimate might. Next, we have the rank up team archetype. This team archetype revolves around casting incantations with high incantation rank, usually at 3 star. Therefore, all characters in this archetype are able to easily upgrade their incantation rank. The core members of this team archetype are Mercuria and Villa. Examples of rank up teams may look like this. Pick a main DPS of your choice, usually either Marcus or Mercuria. If you are using Marcus, Mercuria should be mandatory sub DPS / support in the team. You will only have one more slot for the support, so either choose Argus or Druvis. On the other hand, if your main DPS is Mercuria, the support slots will be both Argus and Druvis. Alternatively, you can also use Lawrence Butterfly as one of the support. The last slot is reserved for the sustain, which is usually Villa. Next, we have the Poison Team archetype. This team archetype revolves around inflicting as many poison stacks as possible under Tuesday's array and doing burst damage once her array ends. Poison inflicts Genesis damage at the end of the round. Genesis damage is akin to true damage, which does not consider the enemy's defensive stats. The core member of this team archetype is Tuesday. Examples of poison teams may look like this. Pick a main DPS of your choice, usually either Ramona or Ezio. If you are using Ramona as the main DPS, for the sub DPS slot, usually it is either for Willow or Ezio depending on the enemies. On the other hand, if you are using Ezio as the main DPS, you can bring Flutterpage. The support slot is exclusively for Tuesday and cannot be substituted. The last slot is reserved for the sustain, which is usually Marsa. If you are using Ezio, you can bring Fatutu as the sustain instead. Finally, we have the Conduit team archetype. This team archetype revolves around energy. No longer do incantations appear in the spell dock, but instead, energy cards will appear. All incantations will cost energy to be casted at the end of the round. Similar to that of a regular incantation, energy card also costs action point when used. The core member of this team archetype is Coppelia. As of this video, there is no dedicated sustain for this team archetype as it is relatively new. Examples of Conduit teams may look like this. Pick a main DPS of your choice, usually either the twins or regulars. One slot is reserved exclusively for Coppelia, so we have one remaining slot for another support. Rhiannon is the current best option for that. The last slot is reserved for the sustain, which is usually Marsa, but will most likely be swapped out for the dedicated sustain in the near future. That is all for the video. We have discussed a lot in this video, starting from the most basic aspect of combat to proper team building. For newer players, I hope that this guide helps you understand how the game generally works. For older players, I hope that you guys learn something new which may lead you to better understand the meta of this game. Thank you for watching this video until the very end.